Welcome to the Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and on today's show, we interview the movers and shakers in the world of property development and real estate. Now, this show is brought to you by a PropTech solution that is quietly saving developers a fortune and making 3D models look ancient. Now, it's not mainstream yet, and that's exactly why it works. If you want the inside track, connect with me on LinkedIn at Glen Palmer Online, or check out the show notes below. So on today's episode, I'm joined by Emma Porter, who is a practice director at Atkins Realis and the founder of Rebuild Site, combining deep infrastructure experience with the mission to reduce construction waste and make the industry a genuine force for good. Emma, lovely to have you on the show. Looking forward to chatting with you. So without further ado, let's get cracking.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No problem whatsoever. I love guests like this, and I love when it comes to the environment and stuff like this. I am all for it. So, jumping into the first one, you've seen the show before. If time travel became a reality and you had a chance to go back in time to when you first started your career, what advice would the person that you are now tell your younger self?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of things that you learn you would change. I'm way more confident. I'm not as hard on myself. I realize that half the time you can start before you're ready. And Rebuild definitely kind of had that ethos. But then I think actually, is that just something that you kind of have to, even say if I did go back in time and told myself that, I wouldn't believe it. You kind of have to learn it, don't you? So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel I think there's a lot that I'm much better at now. I'm much more, I don't give myself a hard time for things. I'm doing my best. Like, that's not to say I'm not interested in learning and understanding where I can improve. I'm just like nice to myself about it.
yeah,
Um, and I think, I mean, one of the things probably from a rebuild perspective is I spent about 8 years saying, someone should do this. This is a good idea. And it took quite a long time before I decided, you know what, I'm going to do it.
yeah,
But then in that time, I worked at Arup and I moved into construction and I learned a lot. So actually, a little bit of me thinks, you know what, I'm pretty happy with where we are, all things in its place. I don't
yeah.
know if I'd change a lot.
It all happened for a reason.
Yeah, I'm happy for the lessons I've learned along the way and the change, like my style now. But I think
Yeah,
if I told myself at 20, even if I magically had that confidence, I don't know. I'm okay with having learned it the way I learned it.
yeah. Well, most people have very various views. Mine would be stop being such a feckin' idiot, to be honest. And concentrate on one thing and do one thing that you enjoy. Rather than being stuck in something that you don't enjoy. And the other is, yeah, having the confidence to do things like me doing this podcast. So you've worked across some of the most complex parts of the construction and the infrastructure world. And then you went to go on and rebuild site. What was the moment where you looked at waste in the industry and thought, you know what, this is extremely frustrating and it needs fixing? Now you've mentioned a little bit on the previous question. Let's go
Yeah.
into it a little bit deeper.
I mean, I think everyone that works in the industry, walks past a site or sees what's in the skips and thinks, gosh, there's so much that you see that you think that's useful and it seems a shame. But you type programs and you type margins and it's not, you can't risk being under ordering and you don't have time to sort through it and contractors can't be putting it on Facebook. And so I don't think it's news that there's a waste problem in the industry. I think everyone who works in the industry is aware of it and thinks, oh, I hate that. And certainly a lot of the customers we get here at Rebuild are maybe people who've worked in the trades, I've worked in the industry, and they'll all tell me anecdotes about this site that threw this away, or the one time that this was left over and it was such a shame, or the time that they kind of it sat in their garage for 20 years because they couldn't bear to throw it away, but there was nothing wrong with it. So I think that awareness of it is not unique to me.
No.
But probably one of the things that did really start me thinking about the ways to fix it was I attended a circular economy conference a long time ago now, probably more than a decade ago. And I met Debbie Ward, who's one of our directors here. And it was all about how the construction industry needed to move from this linear build, use, demolish model to a circular build, use, and then rebuild with those materials. And they were
Mm.
talking at the event about this idea of like a digital map of resources, and you'd be able to see this steel was going to come from a hospital in May, and it was going to go to build a shopping centre in another part of the country the next month. And it sounded amazing, but it also sounded like a dream, like a million miles, my contractor background. I remember
Yeah.
sitting there thinking, we haven't got a chance in hell of making this work the way we do it now.
Yeah.
And having a drink with Debbie on the night, and both of us kind of thinking like we're really on board with the idea, but there needs to be so much more rolling up our sleeves on the ground and figuring out, how on earth are we going to manage to make that happen?
Yeah.
And so that was probably the point at which I was starting that seed of an idea of, maybe the builders merchants need to accept returns more, or maybe we need to get better at just beginning to unpick, well, what would that circular economy need? Who's figuring out the warranties and the pricing and the storage and the transport and the regulation? And there's a lot needs to happen, and we need to start now.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I say, probably about 8 years of me saying, this is a good idea. Someone should do this. I do sometimes liken it to when I leave things at the bottom of the stairs that need to go upstairs for my husband or children to take upstairs, and inevitably I take them upstairs.
Yeah.
It's that. I just got to the point that I was like, do you know what?
I'm
I'm
take
going to
it
do it
myself.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you speak a lot about sustainability and community impact. From where you sit today, do you feel the construction industry is genuinely moving forward in the right direction, or are we still stuck at that surface level commitments rather than the real change?
So I think there's big changes in procurement and big changes in people's understanding that that social value part is an essential part of big parts of the industry now. And that if it being in procurement is the smartest way to drive it, right? So I think there is much more interest and much more commitment, and some really, really brilliant things happening, and people who genuinely care working on the project. I think one of the problems is, though, that our systems and processes just aren't really geared up to change and to support it. So if we stick with rebuilds as an example, quite often I'll get asked to speak at sustainability conferences, and there'll be almost this perception that the contract and the construction industry, it's just that they don't care about sustainability.
Mm.
And I don't think that's true. Like, I'm a contractor, I care a lot. A lot
Yeah.
of contractors care a lot. It's not a lack of care, it's a lack of just a viable, efficient way of managing. And so, for rebuild, we don't really see ourselves as kind of driving change from forcing it through. We more see ourselves as enabling the change, understanding what are the barriers, what's making it hard, how do we remove those barriers, and how do we make it as easy as possible for materials to be put back to good use instead of ending up in a skip.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the community impact section, one of the things that I think we do really well is we kind of layer our impact. So another driving force towards setting up rebuild was during COVID, when the price of construction materials really grew a lot.
Yeah.
Lots of community projects were struggling to afford the materials for whatever it was they had planned, a community garden or a refresh of the village hall or a brownie group that wanted to do a project. And so at the time I was managing director at Story Contracting, and we're a family owned local business. And so naturally those sort of projects are likely to come to me to say, can I help? And of course I say yes. And then I have to figure out, how am I going to help? And so rebuild, from the very start, we gave materials for free to community projects, and that become a big part of who we are. But it's a bit self-fulfilling. It makes the contractors much more likely to get on board, because why wouldn't you? It's a good way of spreading the word about what we do. It gives them access to free materials. So by kind of layering our impact, we're both reducing waste on site by collecting it, and we're supporting community projects. And then we do quite a lot of work experience and work placements as well.
Yeah.
It really is kind of doing it in a way that is kind of the systems geared up to make it possible, rather than it being an extra thing to do on a busy site manager's already busy to-do list.
Yeah. I mean, that is a fantastic ethos. I mean, it's a win-win, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
They're getting rid of their waste, then it's not going to a skip, and you're giving it to people that actually need it.
Yeah.
And, community buildings. And man, I take my hat off to
It's
you.
an easy sell. It's very easy to convince the contractors to go forward, because why wouldn't they?
Yeah, it's going to go into the skip anyway and go into a refill. So why not give it to somebody that actually needs it? So yeah, what a fantastic ethos. So focusing on the UK specifically, what do you see the biggest barriers to reducing waste on live projects? Is it going to be regulation? Is it commercial pressure? Is it fragmented decision making, or is it, just the way that things have always been done and it's always going to remain that way?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of factors in there. I mean, part of it is habit. So we'll find that, say, even for the contractors who are signed up, who are nearby, who are on board, sometimes you'll visit site and you'll hear like, oh, we just threw that away last week. And you're like, I could kill them. And that's habit. That's just a new habit, getting used to it. But I mean,
Yeah.
behavior change it's hard, but it's totally possible. So that's come in through just being aware and thinking about us and being connected with what we do. Some of the things that are barriers are kind of interesting ones. So, for example, the way that VAT is handled on secondhand goods is being a real challenge for us this year, because we have to pay VAT on our full sale because we're not a charity, we're a community interest company. And normally, if you were selling secondhand materials, you're just paying it on the increase on the profit. But if the donated goods, we're paying it on the full amount, and we run pretty lean. So sometimes it's, boring things like VAT that I find myself having meetings about that I did not think would be a factor. Gathering of data and knowing what materials we've got and pricing them and having visibility of what's in stock is really hard running a reuse hub. It's something that I thought would not be that hard. And I'm still 5 years into running it. I have not got the answer to how we have good data around stock levels and what they are and where they've come from. That's a big challenge. And the logistics are challenging as well, because particularly, often the construction materials are quite heavy. We cannot carry that much heavy loads at the moment. And because we're about sustainability, if it's traveling long distances and we have to do 10 trips in a diesel pickup, we're sort of defeating the object. And so a sensible logistics and how materials move from one site to another, it's a challenge for us, but it's a challenge for the industry as well. If we think about a contractor who maybe wants to move the materials from one site to the next. And of course, it's time consuming. So from the contractor's perspective as well, the more it's efficient, easy, does not take up loads of time, the better. One of the things I'm really keen for us to do at Rebuild, and we have done a little bit of research in the past, but the kind of next step is to do much more research into understanding why do materials end up coming to us in the first place. So is it over ordering? Sometimes it is, but often it's not that. Is it customers changing their mind? Is it that it's been damaged in transit, or it's been damaged storage, or a regulation's changed? One of Rebuild was not set up just to reduce waste from going into skips in the Carlisle area. We're much more ambitious than that. We're set up as a pilot to figure out how do you run a successful construction reuse hub. And the data, like the richness of data from our experience running this, is something that we could learn a lot from to apply it over and over throughout the country. So really kind of beginning to answer those questions. What's hard about it? Why is it coming here? What's the drivers that means it ends up going to waste? Is there stuff that's going to waste that doesn't come here? So I don't know all the answers, but they are high on my list of things I want to find out in the next year or so.
Yeah. So is your main ambition then to grow within, nationwide?
Yeah. So my ambition is not for us to run them nationwide. It's for us to share our knowledge and experience and a bit of hand holding and a bit of consulting. And for us to use this to facilitate and unlock and enable. Every town needs one. If you've got a B&Q in town, you could have a Rebuild as well,
Yeah. Definitely.
So I'm definitely ambitious for there to be construction reuse hubs that are thriving all over. I don't need it to me. I don't want to run them myself.
You've got enough on your plate.
Well, as well, we did. So we opened a new site last year, and we tried to open 2 new sites last year and the year before. And what we found is that so much of your time and energy is going into things around the building itself, discussing landlords and leases and parking and change of use and business rates. And actually, I'm going to be at capacity if my job is just doing that. What we should be focusing on is how do you run a reuse hub and why does materials come here, and really focusing in on the kind of circular economy construction industry side of it. And so it makes much more sense for us to help cities and towns and areas that want one of these, for us to help them do it themselves. That unlocks much more potential. It allows much more change to happen. It's a better use of what we've learned. So that's my ambition. Have them everywhere and use this.
Honestly, I hope it works. I
Of
really
course
do.
it will.
Yeah. One of the I love it. One of the things I'm curious about is timing. So, in your experience, how much is construction waste is effectively sort of designed in early? Because people don't fully see or understand the implications of decisions being made at the actual planning stage. So, that's what I want to know. Right at the planning stage, how is this designed in so people can effectively cut down on waste, not have enough, not have an over amount, and not having a load going into the skips and needing. I mean, your don't get me wrong, your ethos and your values and what you do is phenomenal, but to be honest, it
Oh,
shouldn't happen.
yeah. I'd like us. It would be. So someone said once, but because I'll talk to the contractors that are on board, and I'll like be pointing out stuff that's coming, and they're like, but do you not want to kind of that's your stock. Like, why would you try and encourage them to not send you that? I'm like, because I'm not here because I wanted to run a shop. I'm here because I want to reduce waste in the industry.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any danger of me educating the industry to the point that we don't have waste anytime soon. So
yeah,
I'm not worried about stock drying up. And if it does, happy days. Um, if that was to happen in the future, then rebuild would be focusing on like actual true circular economy, deconstructed buildings and actual material
yeah,
that's already been used, because in reality the vast majority of our material here is not circular, it is linear, it's leftover, brand new, it's half the time unopened stock.
yeah,
um in terms of kind of where does the waste come in, it does come in at every point in the process, but I think it's understanding the drivers as to why it comes in. The risk of under ordering and the consequences for the contractor is so much higher than over ordering, that
yeah,
we've not really got the right systems and incentives in place. Like, so I'll give you a quick example. We were doing a summer it's like thing with school last year, and we were making little key rings, and we needed to buy the little like metal things to go on the key rings. And
yeah,
the website we were ordering them from, I think it was maybe £4 for 50 or about £4.50 for 100. Well, why wouldn't you just buy 100 just in case? We don't need 100. We probably only need 40, but
yeah,
it's only 50p more for another 50. So we may as well get them just in case. And that's a very normal like logic, that of course, like that's how humans are going to work, right?
yeah,
And so if you're thinking about planning the site and you're already having the delivery, it does not make sense to make it too lean, because the price of getting it wrong, of being a little bit short on whatever
mhm,
materials, if you under ordered, and then particularly if it was something that had a long lead in time, and then your program was delayed because you were
yeah,
short on a material, the
yeah,
costs of that are far greater, and the happiness of your client
yeah,
much more impacted.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think it's thinking about, well, what are the drivers and what is the reason? It's and how do we kind of de-risk that? How do we make it leaner without putting the programs at risk and without
yeah,
threatening the quality of the work? Um,
yeah,
I think you are seeing much more awareness around this issue and much more engagement in it. But that's why I'm so keen for us to undertake that research that begins to kind of understand, well why, how much, because anecdotally, having done this for a few years, it's not always over ordering. There's other factors at play.
mm,
Um, customers changing their mind on things, or for new build, quite a lot of the contractors on board with us are housing developers. Um, and for them, the people buying a new house expect the new house to be pristine. Like, they don't want a scratch on the skirting board if you're buying a new house.
yeah,
So say they've got a skirting board, and the skirting board they use on every site is the same. So you would think that would be an easy one to send from site to site. But if it's only been on one site and it's already opened and it's a little bit dusty because it's been on site and the packaging's a bit damaged, and the joiners probably don't work for the housing developer direct, the joiners are probably self-employed and have priced the job accordingly.
mhm,
There is not a chance that joiner is going to sand down that little scratch and fill it in for good reason. Like, if you or I
yeah,
were the joiner, we wouldn't do the same either. You would
yeah,
open the new
exactly.
pack
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
you're on a tight program and and there's a completion date coming up and the customer wants their house. And so it's understanding like why it happens, I think is an interesting question. Like how, and if, and so if your main reason that if it's a housing developer, well, maybe that's a storage, maybe really clean, well, like lit clean storage so that it's not getting a bit dusty and a bit scratched and the packaging damaged
Yeah.
is the solution, rather than putting pressure on the joiner won't change that behavior, and educating them on waste won't change that behavior,
Yeah.
because their business is relying on them hitting that program. So I think that kind of getting into what is the human drive. My degree is psychology as well. So of course I always think everything comes down to kind of people and their drivers. But I think
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons that we were able to make it work, is because we really tried to think about, well, how do we make this easy?
Yeah. Nice. And then sort of building on top of that, we're now in a very digital age where, you have digital twins, you have 3D visualization and all of that sort of thing. So do you think that better visualization and shared digital understanding between the clients, the designers, the contractors, that could play a role in reducing rework, over ordering, and unnecessary waste before even projects even break ground?
Yeah, I think that early contractor involvement is a big part of that as well. Getting the contractors involved early on, having that kind of really like collaborative approach to, okay, well, what's the program, what's happening in what order, what amounts do we need? Because when it's disjointed, and if everyone's a bit worried about that risk, then people are building in a bit of a buffer to the risk at every stage. Whereas, I'm a little bit out of touch with where things like Project 13 and Enterprise Model are, but that approach was always about that working together and having that more visibility and having the right people involved early enough in the project to be able to drive it.
Yeah.
I can't see how they wouldn't drive out waste.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I think,
It's
with
easier said than
technology.
done, though, isn't it? And
Oh,
it's
exactly. But with
those
with
test things.
with the way that the world is going, and the way that, I mean, I've seen some amazing things with digital twins nowadays, which you can cut down on waste, and you can plan exactly what you got, and you can build it all in a 3D model and have it all done and dusted for you with all the but like you say, you can never get rid of human error, and
But do you think
exactly as you said.
even that model that we're talking, that's still linear. It's better. It's leaner and more efficient and less. But actually, what would be really cool was if you could take it and rather than say, right, design a building, design a waste, almost say, these are the materials we've got. What can you build with this materials? Like, that almost
Yeah.
thinking about it the other way around. If we do a project here, because we really like to we kind of really stick to our values and everything. So I don't know if you can see the windows behind me are secondhand windows. So that from our shop. So
Yeah.
our design was not designing what size windows we want and then finding windows. Our design was, what windows do we have? And that is the size window opening we're going to have. That kind of material first approach,
Yeah.
and look, I'm from a contractor, I get that we're a long way from building at scale in that way. But actually, if we really were serious about reusing materials, it
That would
wouldn't
be the
just
way
be
forward.
design that was lean. It would be a complete different way of design. It would be
Yeah.
design that was material first.
Yeah, it
But
could
I
be.
think we're off a while off that.
You know what? I don't think so, Emma. When I think about the things that AI can do nowadays, which is phenomenal, you could say to AI, "This is the material that I've got. Come up with a design that is attractive, etc., etc., etc."
Yeah,
That
that'd be cool.
I don't
Like when
think
you're a
it's.
student and you have to make your dinner by whatever happens to be in the fridge.
Yeah, I don't think it's a million miles away. Honestly, Emma, really loved having you on the show. I've enjoyed our conversation. We really got to take care of the planet, and both as you and I know, construction industry has a huge part to play. And I'm
Yeah.
really glad to see that Rebuild is taking genuine interest in tackling excess waste in the industry. So kudos to you. Once again, thanks to my listeners and viewers of YouTube as well. Emma, just before we sign off, if listeners or viewers or contractors want to get in contact with you and see what you offer at the Rebuild site, what are the best way for my listeners to do that?
Yeah, well, our website is rebuildsite.co.uk. We think we're hilarious. In fact, we hit 14,000 followers on Facebook this morning. So that's exciting. Yeah. We've had 1 million views on Facebook this month, which is just
Brilliant.
ridiculous, isn't it?
That's brilliant.
We're on Instagram and TikTok, and really TikTok can tell that I'm over 40. So our views on TikTok are terrible. And we're on LinkedIn as well, so you can find us on any of them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Emma. That wraps up today's episode. And if you're still wondering about that prop tech that I mentioned at the start, good. You should be. Drop me a message and I'll show you what the early adopters are up to. You've been listening to Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer. I was joined by Emma Porter. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.